Hey, folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason Gravely. Today, we are throwing it back to Jacob Valhalla Myers. And this episode is really cool because just this weekend, I was able to go with a bunch of friends camping and canoeing and kayaking. We did this like 21, 22-mile route through these rivers and lakes. And right at the halfway point is where we'd camp. And that was our night of camping. It was at a campground that was actually accessible by road. One of our former guests reached out and said, "Hey, been thinking about you. Saw the news with announcing the 1,000 episodes and the partnership with Outdoors.com." And he's like, "By the way, I'm in Florida." And I'm like, "Well, where are you in Florida?" And they said, where they were. And I'm like, holy cow, that's like 30 minutes from where I am, like right now. If you're around, come by the campground. We're having dinner soon. And, if you're available. And it was Jacob here, the guest of today's episode. So such a cool full circle moment. Jacob, ever since this experience, he was talking about some big polar exploration and kind of the big glacier crossings. And he has since attempted some pretty huge adventures. He most recently got back from an Antarctic expedition, trying to be the youngest person to go from the coast to the South Pole of Antarctica. And after a couple weeks, he was really hurting, and things did not go to plan, and he had to bail. There is a really great article on Outdoors.com about that experience, and I'm going to link it in the show notes. Please check it out. But anyway, he got back like a month and a half ago and made it out and hung out with us for like a couple hours. It was absolutely awesome. It is a rare treat to be able to meet our guests from the show. I don't always get to, some of these people are so far away. Jacob lives in Montana now, so I don't obviously cross paths with him that much down here. But anyway, Jacob, thank you so much for making the effort to come out. It was such a pleasure to meet you, first of all, and also to hear your stories. Like our group, we had like 20 people at that were doing this trip. They were all just sitting around listening to Jacob's stories and his experiences on Antarctica, and it was really cool, really cool. So thanks for making it happen, and obviously, for today's throwback episode, I figured it'd be a great one to feature. And this is when he thru-hiked the Arizona Trail, which is just such an incredible experience. So this was from 2021, September 2021. So hope you enjoy. And let's go ahead and dive in. Jacob Valhalla Myers, how's it going?
Going great, Mason. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. Where are you coming from?
I'm at my home office right now on lunch break. So this is a very rare occasion where I'm actually in like a suit instead of like half naked playing in the woods.
Oh my goodness, man! I saw you on video for just a second, and I was like, he's dressed up nice. That's great. I'm wearing a T-shirt, just so you know.
Oh, used to it.
So what are you doing? Where is your home office? Where in the country are you?
I live in Western North Carolina, Southern Appalachian Range. It's a really small town called Cashers. We're actually technically a village.
No kidding. Used to go up there every summer of my life, and we'd go all throughout Pisgah and DuPont, and obviously the Great Smoky Mountains. And yeah, man. So were you born and raised there?
Yep, whole life.
So tell us about what was it like growing up there? Were you encouraged to get out? I mean, that is the land, like you mentioned in the email, land of waterfalls. I mean, there's so much beauty there. Did y'all take full advantage of it as a kid?
Oh my God, yeah. So Gorges State Park is my home park, and they're really famous for Rainbow Falls, which if anyone Googles it, you would see the photo of it flying over articles all over the internet. It's a famous waterfall. So the park was founded a year after I was born. I grew up playing back in there. The entire area is actually a retirement age community, so there wasn't a lot of kids, which means the couple of us that were around in the neighborhood, instead of going to like a park or playing like little league and stuff like that, we would climb trees or we'd jump off waterfalls and go swimming and stuff that makes my mother really nervous. And I love to tag her in the Instagram posts.
Oh man, my mom's the same way. If she could turn back time and not get me outside and doing these things, I think she would. But you're right there, man. You grew up right in the heart of all that. That's really cool. So when for you did your sights start expanding out from Appalachia and North Carolina into some of the experiences you've done so far?
Well, I didn't get off the East Coast for the first time ever until last year.
Oh man, and that was for the Arizona Trail.
First it was for Montana. So I was bartending at the same place I've been working at since I was a kid before I got, my big boy job. And our one of our bus boys, I was out on the porch having a cocktail, and he goes, "I bet you won't go to Montana with me." I said, "All right." And he didn't even say why we were going, but I bought a plane ticket. He bought a plane ticket. We flew to Bozeman in October, so it was right after the range burnt down. We went to Sacagawea Peak, which is the highest mountain in the Bridger Mountain Range. We went over into the Gallatins. We played in Yellowstone, and that's what put the West on my radar. And immediately when I was out there, I was like, I need to get some mileage in and really see what the West is about. So naturally, the Arizona Trail came up.
Man, that is so cool. Yeah, I was the same way growing up. Like I had always been in the Appalachians, always been in that area. Had never seen those mountains out west, and my first time in Colorado, it blew my mind. And so for you, I'm sure Montana is even more rugged and more jagged peaks. I'm sure you just it was amazing. I'm sure it was amazing.
It stole my heart completely. I'm actually moving to Bozeman this winter to train for Shackleton XFed, which I guess we'll talk about in a little bit.
Oh, that is awesome and cool. Well, so tell us about what were you doing? Were you talk about getting some miles in? Were you already a backpacker at that point, or had been you grew up around the Appalachian Trail? So was that part of what you knew how to do already?
So I definitely knew how to play in the woods. Since we were so close to it, I didn't often have to sleep out there in the woods because I could always walk home. I mean, Gorgeous State Park wasn't even 2 miles from my childhood home. So I played in the woods a lot. I knew the woods really well. I didn't have a ton of camping experience. I picked that up in college when I would go on rock climbing trips, and we would stay at campgrounds and do that style of camping. In 2018, I went on there was some stuff that went down, and I found myself homeless living out of my car as I was finishing up college. And when I came home, that experience sort of opened my eyes to living with less things, material things. And I started hitting the trails again, and I started riding again, and I tackled the Art Lobe solo for my very first hiking trip.
And what is that?
It's a 32-mile backcountry roller coaster here in Pisgah. 10,000 feet of gain across 31, 32 miles. Goes back in Shining Rock, which is pretty rugged area. They don't allow any blazes, so you have to do a little bit of trail finding, and that was a wild experience in itself.
No kidding, man, and that's so interesting being homeless for a while taught you that, and I will say, that's I've experienced a little bit of that to where it's like, well, if I can do that, what else can I do when I get back on my feet? It sounds like you took the lessons from that and put them to work instead of completely running away from it. That's pretty cool.
I think of it as a catalyst, and that's kind of what I've always referred to 2018 as. Like, I'm a very, very different person now than I was back then, and I think that experience was probably the starting point.
So tell us, how did it, obviously going out to Montana and Yellowstone and seeing all that in Wyoming, how did that directly tie to the Arizona Trail? And what did it look like to get out there and start making that happen? How much time went by? How much planning and all that?
I was a little over 200 miles into my Appalachian Trail through hike last year when the world ended. And so I got off and put all that on hold. Of course, that fall, I went to Montana for the first time, and I was starting to look for trails that were a little less known, something that wasn't one of the Triple Crowns, because I still didn't want the massive crowds, but I wanted some long mileage. I wanted, I just started to really taste that full Appalachian Trail long distance backpacking experience when I lost it. So I heard whispers about the AZT. I don't hear about it much here on the East Coast. And the more I looked into it, it's, sometimes 100-mile stretches of flat desert. And I come from a rainforest. So what a contrast that would be. And mountains at 9,000 feet, where the biggest on the East Coast is floating right around 7. Like, it's a different planet completely. And I planned for it. I said that I was going to do it in, I believe it was November. And then I really started looking at the logistics of it in January, and then started acquiring my gear.
So tell us about what it was like starting. Where does it start? What did that feel like? What was the climate like? And how were you feeling personally when you first set out on the trail?
So when the shuttle took off, I had this really bizarre moment. Of course, the West is obviously big because you're not buried in shrubbery and trees in the forest, so you can see how big the world is out there. And that hit me right in the gut. I'm standing right next to the Mexican border in southern Arizona at Coronado National Monument, and then I see the car drive away, and it kicks up a cloud of dust, and the entire world falls silent. And it's my first time in a desert environment ever. So second time in the West, first time in a desert. It was really, really bizarre because I've never felt out of place anywhere in the outdoors before, anywhere on the East Coast. And but being out there in the desert, I felt like I was put on a whole new planet, and I was all alone, totally isolated. I passed one couple that evening right before bed, and no one before.
That is wild, man. I've been to that area a few times. Never right to the southern terminus, but on some roads near there. And you like you said, you start at the Mexican border, really right up against the fence, if not very, very close to it. And from there, that you're hiking all the way to the northern end of Arizona. I'm sure it just felt like being on Mars to you. Like you said, it's so open, so empty, but beautiful, and also, just such an amazing experience. So tell us about the first few days. What were some of the experiences like? What did you get into? What were some of the first challenges? Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. I am a proud user of Manscaped. They are the revolutionary hair trimmer that a lot of men use. And our friends over at Manscaped have been working night and day to bring you below-the-waist grooming experience like none other with their brand new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It's the next generation of trimmer with interchangeable blade heads for whatever shave your mind can imagine. Is it the biggest technological advancement of all time? I think it is. And that's why you need to get it and upgrade your grooming game to the Ultra Sphere this year by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code ADVENTURE at checkout. You can take it on the go. This puppy comes with a travel case, travel lock feature to avoid accidentally powering on or off. It's actually really handy. One of my headlamps just died the other night because it turned on by itself in my backpack. And speaking of lights, it has dual LED spotlights just like your regular lawnmower. So like I said, get 20% off plus free shipping with the code ADVENTURE at manscaped.com. It's very high tech for very low places. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
So, more water than I've ever carried in my life. I started carrying 5 liters because I was really nervous about water. Growing up in the rainforest, I might as well be a human salamander. I say that all the time. There's never a shortage of water anywhere. You can carry a half a liter for most of the Appalachian Trail. So I had a base weight of 9 pounds, but with food and water, my bag was about 20 at the beginning. And I'm going up Miller Peak, huffing and puffing because my lungs really didn't like the dry desert air. It was filling with dust. And by the end of the first week, I had my first taste of sun poisoning, and that just mollywopped me. I mean, I was taking a knife at the end of the first week and scraping bubbles of fluid off the back of my calves that were seizing up.
Good gracious. And how did you what was that feeling like? So you were probably pretty burnt, but what was sun poisoning like?
For me, it was muscle spasms. It was chronic dehydration. So as a feeling, it's just kind of like not firing on all cylinders. Mentally, I'd feel pretty strong and ready to move, and then my body would maintain maybe three-quarters of the pace that I was trying to for that little while until I really got dialed in with my water intake, forcing myself to to camel up at every water source. And there was a steep learning curve to it. And in hindsight, we had a good amount of support this year because this was a record year for hikers on the AZT. So there were definitely angels willing to help. But once or twice, I put myself in situations where if someone hadn't offered me some water, things could have started to get pretty ugly pretty quick.
Golly. So the record number, what was that due to?
Everyone that I spoke to had the same stories I had. There was a lot of people with PCT tags that were nervous about the crowds on the PCT. There were a couple of AT no-goes. Since the entire planet all of a sudden has a love for the outdoors, it became harder to find less known spaces. So there was a lot of folks like me who wanted some of the solace, or some of the solitude, sorry, that the desert provides, that a lesser known trail in Arizona provides. And so that was the majority of what it was folks not wanting to touch the Triple Crown. Or on the flip side of that was people training for the Triple Crown and using the Arizona Trail as a training ground.
Did you get that solitude that you were looking for despite the crowds?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I say that it was a record year and you definitely met people, but there was an air about the community this year where everyone was very much hiking their own hike. So I spent maybe 5 or 6 days with the couple I had met on the first day. By sheer coincidence, we ran into each other at a Trail Angel camp at mile 123, and then we did the Saguaro National Park, not together, but we saw each other every day after that. And then there was a group of three that I really really enjoyed spending time with. If I had to call them my tramley, that's what they would be. We met at Roosevelt. It was this burning hot day. The ridge is exposed and was burnt out from last year's fire season. So we all sort of got to know each other doing a moonlight hike out of Roosevelt, which is 10 miles and cumulatively, as you ride the roller coaster, about 4,250 feet of gain. So that was a really cool experience hiking on a ridge under moonlight, getting to hear their stories. Other than that, completely alone.
Wow, that is awesome. Now I know that those were some surprises in the sense of being busy, but also feeling that aloneness. I know the other thing that was probably new for you was the weather in that aspect. In the heat, you talk about Saguaro National Park, just famous for those saguaro cactus. But you also faced snow on some of the mountains. You had snow to trek through, and in those late winter conditions. Was that surprising to you, or was that expected?
So, so Saguaro is one of two places on the trail you need a permit to camp at. It's that and then the Grand Canyon. I got up just outside of Saguaro that morning, and to see if I wanted to clear the entire park in one day, which means going up and over Mica Mountain. So I start in the morning, 7 a.m., frost all over my tent, and it's not shivering cold, but there's ice. So pack up, I get moving, temps rise. There's like a 11, maybe 12-mile water carry as you go up the mountain. The day heats up, the sun starts bearing down, so I woke up cold, Now I'm sweating hot and running out of water. And I hit the top of the mountain, and there's 2 feet of snow.
Oh my gosh.
I signed the registry that night as I got to the terminus of Saguaro National Park, and I signed it. And I said, "I think I've experienced every human emotion in one day."
You wrote that you mentioned that was probably one of your top most difficult days of hiking ever.
Oh, for sure. Elevation gain is something that I really enjoy. I mean, I don't have to go terribly fast, but I like standing atop a summit and looking down where I came from. And it was the whole thing of it was the perfect mix of a frozen desert, a hot desert, walking through snowpack, walking through loose snow. You'd follow tracks that went off trail, so I had to look at the GPS and get myself back on route. Night was falling, and so there's a ridge that you're walking on. It's this razor thin switchback on the backside of Micah with 75-foot cliffs, and if the snow decides to wash away under your feet, you're going off the cliff. And
Good
it
gracious.
was so much in just one day. I think it was 24, maybe 25 miles, like all of that packed into just a marathon, basically.
Unbelievable. Golly. So after that, what was the trail like? Did it slowly become something else in the sense of terrain or scenery, or was it more or less similar until getting to the Grand Canyon?
Well, there's a distinct difference from the low desert and the high desert. You'll come out on top of the Mogollon Rim, which I think it's 500 miles long. It's basically this 1,000-foot cliff that shoots out of the earth that separates the low desert from the high desert. So you leave all the sandiness behind, and when you're up on the Mogollon, you're in these evergreen forests. You're seeing elk. There's a couple of wolves that are left behind, and the terrain shifts there. But most of the low desert, aside from a couple of big mountains we climbed, was exactly what you'd think of when you hear the word desert.
Jeez. So tell us a story from the experience, something that maybe surprised you, or a really good day after that really bad experience. What was maybe a lesson you learned out there, kind of early on in the experience?
Uh, as far as lessons go, one thing that I learned is that if I was going to continue doing the trip solo, I would need to really hone in on what it took to take care of my body. I took a rest day in Oracle with that couple that I was speaking about earlier, and she really beat into my skull that I needed to start stretching in the morning. I needed to start rewarding my body for putting up these big mileage days. Towards the end, I was doing 30 plus every single day. And so, coming off of that, now that I'm home, forcing myself to do a better job at taking care of me, even when I don't feel like it, has been really important.
Oh man, absolutely. That's a great lesson to learn young as well. What were some of the biggest differences to you? Maybe the less obvious differences between desert hiking and growing up in a rainforest, like you said.
You'll definitely put up some quicker mileage in the desert.
What does that do to?
Well, just the long flat walks you can definitely up your pace. Whereas in the mountains, you're always going to have some versatile up and downs. But even in those flat tracks, sand is never just sand. There's packed sand. If it rains, all the sand is going to start grabbing into your boots and weighing your boots down, like literally adding pounds to your shoes. So as you're navigating washes, you're going to move slow. If you're navigating the wet sand, you're going to move slow. And everything that's ever going on is entirely weather dependent. I mean, in Appalachia, if it's raining out, you may move a little bit slower because of mudslides, but all in all, there's root cover and there's enough stable ground all over the place where it won't affect your pace too much. There's some days in the desert where I was slogging through what I refer to as moon sand.
Oh my gosh, moon sand. That's awesome. So what would you say was easier about being out in the desert? Obviously getting the mileage, maybe not what is easier. You mentioned some of that, but what did you enjoy the most?
There is something so cool. I remember this first coming out of Saguaro. So as you stand on top of Mount Micah, you're literally a mile above the ground, the valley floor. So
Wow.
looking an entire mile down to the earth, and then as you look beyond, you can see the next mountain range, which on the backside of it, it's called Oracle Ridge, Mount Lemon. Sorry. So you can see Mount Lemon. You're literally seeing your next two, for some people, 3 or 4 days of walking from one spot. You can't do that in Appalachia. So as I'm walking across an entire day and a mountain just gets bigger and bigger and bigger as I'm approaching it, like, that was so sick.
You can see things for such a long amount of time, such a long ways away. I remember biking to the San Francisco Peaks and Flagstaff one time, biking towards them and seeing them 2 or 3 days out on a bike even, and getting closer and closer and realizing, oh my gosh, it'll drive you crazy too, because things are so far away and you see them for multiple days, and at a walking pace, it's even more extreme. So I'm sure there was part of that was also challenging.
The Grand Canyon, other than walking from Mount Micah to Mount Lemon, the Grand Canyon's the only other one that offered that, where you're like 3,000 feet of descent and maybe 2 hours into your walk before you can even see the Colorado River, and then you got to get down to the river, and then you see the highest ridge in the distance, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, that's really high, and that's only the halfway point of as high as you're going to climb out of the Grand Canyon, that same day.
Jeez, that is wild. So yeah, tell us about getting to the Grand Canyon. What was it like getting there? I've only biked up to it, and I have hiked to the bottom, haven't hiked across. But I mean, that's such a bucket list item for so many people. That's such a huge focus for you. Would you consider that a highlight of the trip? And tell us about approaching it.
The night before, so I actually met a woman as I was doing the urban route in Flagstaff, who had a room at the Grand Canyon Hotel that night, or the lodge that night. She put me up the night previous. So I took that evening off and really explored the southern rim, saw a bunch of amazing views, and got really excited for the next day. And then I went to do a single day rim to rim. That's what I wanted to do the entire trip. And honestly, by the time I got down to the Colorado River, something had happened in my left ankle where it swelled into the lining of my gaiter, and my gaiter started cutting off blood flow to my foot, and I started moving so slowly, and I was in a kind of pain that I'd never felt before. And so coming down was amazing, but it took probably another 4 hours before the pain would cut off from my foot. I took a little time off and sat in the Colorado River trying to get the swelling down, put my foot above my head, popped a couple ibuprofens. Like, I could not get the swelling to stop. So I ended up completely untying my shoe, like taking the laces out of my shoe, and I climbed out of the Grand Canyon like that. It sort of marred my climb back out. It really wasn't enjoyable until I was almost to the North Kaibab. That's the northern rim. Right about there, when I could stand in one spot, see the southern rim. I could see Mount Humphreys behind the Grand Canyon in the distance. Like, seeing the ground I had covered brought it all back, and it was a good end of the day. But I was beaten up bad in the canyon.
Do you know what happened?
My working theory is, in the same way that if you tie your shoes tight, when you fly in a plane, and then when a plane lands, your feet swell. I think something to do with the quick elevation drop, because you drop almost a mile in elevation as you descend into the canyon. I think that's what made it swell, and then maybe I ignored it too long, and I let it. I interrupted the blood flow too long that it really messed up my foot, but I'm not certain.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode. Jeez, man, I'm sorry to hear that. So did it heal as you kept going, or did you have to take some time off? Because you're like almost at the end right there.
Yes, 70 miles from the finish at
Oh,
that point.
70 miles. Wow. So what did you do? Just slog through the rest?
I what did I listen to? I listened to a lot of Avenged Sevenfold, Curse the Sky a lot. I cried a little bit.
Hey, that's perfect. That's what you got to do. Something I don't hear of, actually, I'm Googling it right now. Something I don't hear about a lot is the finish line of the Arizona Trail. Is there anything there to signify what is that like to get there? Because, on a through hike, typically, you got Katahdin on the AT, or you've got the international border on the other two major trails. But what about the Arizona Trail?
So the northern terminus is at the Utah border. There's a little campground in there. It's not anything terribly amazing, but it does go from your typical high desert and Grand Canyon-esque area to this really bizarre, super soft red sand. There's an obelisk that marks the northern terminus, but I think as far as that goes, it's really one of those the journey is the destination type things. Other than the phenomenal sunset that I got right as I was finishing the trail. I mean, I took my last step on the AZT at peak golden hour.
You can't beat that, man. You cannot beat that. That is awesome. How long did it end up taking you, all told?
All in all, it took me 39 days. That includes this really weird 4-day break I had to take because the post office lost my replacement sleeping pad. I took a couple days off for that I didn't necessarily have to. But on my days off, a buddy invited me out to go canyoneering in Sedona. So I was dangling like 200 feet over a canyon on ropes instead of on trail for a couple days, which is the coolest zero I've ever had.
Yeah, it wasn't all lost. That is what's important. And on adventures, I'm definitely one for that. Take side adventures. There's, mountains to climb, there's canyons to descend, and there's so much to do when you go through these places. So I'm a huge advocate for adding micro adventures into it, So I'm glad you did that. So you finished the Arizona Trail. Then what? Would you just go back home? How did you process transitioning back into normal life? What was that like?
I came home and got a therapist. I did not transition well. I don't have anyone in my immediate circle that does any of this. And so everyone kind of asks, like, oh, hey, how was your trip? How, your vacation? And like, it's a little different from that, but overall good. I started throwing myself back into fitness. I'm currently training to run my first official ultra. I ran an unofficial ultra last year to raise money for one of the trail angels on the AT, Odie from the Hiker Yearbook. And that was crazy because I didn't know that, I was never a very athletic kid. And then last year I jogged/walked 78 miles straight, which was crazy. So now I'm back home and I'm training full time, first off to run my first 100 miler. And then I'm going on an expedition this winter with Shackleton.
Tell us about Shackleton. What is that?
Shackleton is a expedition it's a clothing company that started to do expeditions. They're named after Ernest Shackleton, who, as far as the English are concerned, is one of the greatest expeditioners on planet Earth. Oh, I was reading a study yesterday. Ben Saunders, who is another incredible Arctic expeditioner. All these guys explore the Antarctic. It's that kind of expedition. Ben Saunders being a big name in the community. And he said that there was a study put out that measured the physical limits of human endurance. and then someone relocated the data against Shackleton's crew. Shackleton has this incredible story where his ship, the Endurance, crashed, and the entire crew was stranded alone on an Antarctic island for 2 years. And the what it took for all of them to survive superseded what the scientific study said was humanly possible by like 300,000 kilocalories.
Oh my gosh. And not one single person of that crew perished during that time either, which is so remarkable.
Um, oh my God, I could talk about that story all day.
So this company is named after Shackleton, of course, and they're doing expeditions. Well, tell us about, how what are you doing with them?
So they offer levels 1 through 5, one being polar skills. It's more theoretical. You'll get in the field, but you'll sleep inside most nights to get a foothold. Through something amazing that happened, I'm able to skip straight to level 3. And so we're going to Fence, Norway, and we're going to be pulling sleds that contain all of our gear for a week's worth of survival. We're crossing the Hardangerjokelen Glacier. I've been practicing saying that for a week now.
Hey, that was pretty good. I don't know if you said it right, but it sounded great to me.
Thanks, man. It's one of the largest glaciers in Norway. So this winter we're going to be crossing that on foot as a team, and the exped is being led by Wendy Searle, who's the 7th woman in history to walk unsupported, unassisted, across Antarctica to the South Pole, and then Lewis Rudd. Oh, maybe I got her statistic wrong. Lewis Rudd was the 2nd man in history to walk unsupported and unassisted across all of Antarctica.
Oh my gosh, sounds like some great adventure sports podcast interviews right there. Um, that is awesome. So, what is your hope with polar exploration? Do you have greater hopes for that or greater goals for that?
There's a particular trip I have in mind. There's a series of trails that I want to link together. No one has ever done all of them in their entirety. I don't want to get too deep into that right now because it's still a couple years away before I'm ready to attempt. But the skills that I'll be able to gain from this exped are going to be vital in me being able to pull that off. The all in all, that journey is going to take about 2 years to execute. So
That is fantastic. That is awesome. Awesome to hear. Well, gosh, is there anything else that you'd like to share about the Arizona Trail or about your experience doing that, and also about your experiences that you were aspiring to now?
as far as the AZT goes, I did this on the Appalachian Trail too. You can get sort of nervous as a trail starts and glue yourself to the first people that you come across. And they could be amazing people, but they may not be out there for the same reasons as you. You may mar your experience by living your hike through someone else's experience, doing the mileage they want to do, starting and stopping at the times that they want, going to the towns that they want. I think what the AZT taught me that I didn't know when I was attempting the Appalachian Trail was that just how important it is for me to find what I want to do and what I want to get out of these trips, because I'm crossing all the mileage on my own 2 feet. So I need to get as much out of it as I can. So don't, for anyone who's starting in through hiking, I wouldn't latch on to the first people you meet just because you aren't confident enough as a backpacker yet. Explore what there is out there to do and really find the way that you like to hike so that you can hike your own hike.
Jacob, that's some seriously solid advice because it stems from fear, which usually there's a threshold to fear to just get out there. But then you get out there and you're in it, and it's easy to succumb to some of that fear and insecurity, like you said, or that lack of confidence, and you can mar your experience and make it less impactful by getting tied into somebody who might not be out there for the same reasons, just like you said. Well, tell it before we go. I wanted to ask you what is the deal with your trail name? Tell us about the story behind that.
My brother. So I have Nordic heritage, and my best friend, I refer to him as my brother. He was deployed on a Middle Eastern tour when I left on the AT. That was right about the time that things were popping off with Iran, and it was getting kind of scary. And as much as I could call him, I would. And for a while, I couldn't. Every time that before we get off the phone, we would just say Valhalla or bust. And everyone around me is saying Katahdin or bust, and it finally became this funny, like, Viking thing where I just became Valhalla, which is one of the places you can go in the Viking afterlife.
Valhalla or bust. I love it. Jacob, man, I really appreciate you being on and telling us about your experience. I'm excited for you and the some of the adventures that you've got coming up. Do you think more through hiking or more trails are in your future in the sense of kind of some of the more traditional ones like the AT, or are you focused on polar experiences now?
AT 2023.
Hey, okay, 2023. All right, planning ahead. You can wear a suit.
I don't know. That might add to my base weight.
It definitely would. It definitely would. I don't know if anyone's done it though.
Oh, it's the driest on record. I don't think we've said that yet. When I started, they had 0.0 measurement of precipitation all the way up until almost the end of March. Driest year on record in all of recorded history.
Holy cow. How did everyone fare? Was everyone okay, or did that become a serious issue?
Trail angels, man, I'm telling you, they do not get the appreciation they deserve. Water caches, every 10 miles, you would find at least 1 gallon, and everyone was really, they were really trying their best not to take more than they needed so that everyone would be okay.
Man, I tell you what, we've never done an episode on it, but a trail angel interview would be awesome. Because, here's why. Because people listen to this show and they aspire to do these things, but they might not be in the right place in life to do a whole thru hike. Even a month-long thru hike like the AZT, it's like they might not be there, but they might be able to dedicate some weekends, summers or weekends during the hiking season to help out in some way, be it trailheads or whatnot. So maybe there are people out there that could do this more if we helped raise some awareness about it. That'd be pretty cool, actually.
That's a great idea, man. That could do so much for the community too, getting everyone else involved.
Sweet. Well, shoot, that gave me a new idea for an episode. So thank you for that too. But thanks again. I'll let you get back to work and I'll let you know when this comes out.
Good stuff. Yeah, I appreciate talking to you, Mason.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.